that's a huge misconception, because basically whenever you want to operationalize or improve your revenue, you look into, I think half a year ago, I was working together with ChatGPT back then, because back then ChatGPT was a little bit, so anything that I record, and I've been talking to ChatGPT and Claude, the connections that you've had, the references that you've had, they will not matter, because I mean, every AI guy says you need to do this or you'll get taken over by. So that is, I think, the biggest pile of.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to a very special episode of Harvest, the MSP sales show. Now, regular listeners will know that we talk all about how we can do more with our existing customers and not necessarily get fixated totally on just getting the new logos through the door. So I get the pleasure of speaking to people from all around our industry and occasionally outside of our industry. And I particularly love those ones because we're all sort of familiar with that kind of echo chamber effect. So it's lovely to get those sort of fresh perspectives. And I've got some really fresh stuff from a wonderful professional in the area of AI. Now, don't turn off, because I know you've heard an awful lot about this in the past, but this is going to be a slightly different take in terms of, we're going to talk about why perhaps there's a couple of step backs to take before we start looking at the AI technology. And the reason my guest is so well qualified to do this is because he's been building data analytics, innovation labs, I should say, at Capgemini. So it has that experience of maybe some larger kind of MSP operations, and basically after getting sick of the corporate politics, has now started a consultancy all around RevOps for smaller companies, just like yourselves. So I'm not going to butcher his intro any further. I'm going to bring in Rutger himself. Rutger Katz, welcome to the show.
Hi, James. Nice to be here.
Thank you so much. Listen, before we dive in, I'm going to get an intro from you in a second, but first thing is going to be a misconception about you. What do people get wrong about you when they first meet you, Rutger?
Well, I mean, the terminology revenue operations, it's something that maybe got hyped out in the US and sort of now slowly trickling down into Europe. But what people usually hear when they hear revenue operations, they think, oh, that's probably just a CRM guy, right? And that's a huge misconception, because basically whenever you want to operationalize or improve your revenue, you look into revenue operations. We look at the process, we look at the process adoption, we look at the data underneath, everything that has to do with how your sales people or your customer success people like do their job better. That topic is revenue operations. That whole facilitation of getting your workforce, improve your workforce, that is revenue operations in my perspective.
That's a really nice clarification. I think that's needed. I remember joining, so in my time at sort of Linode and Akamai, that was my first exposure to RevOps, as it were, and that was an American organization, so that same kind of thing. And it was really that kind of opened my eyes a little bit to, okay, how many areas it does touch on. So that's really useful. Do you want to give us a bit of an expanded view then on your experience, Rutger, if that's okay, just in terms of,
Sure.
You mentioned your time at Capgemini. You've obviously switched now to working with a much more lean operation.
Yeah, so maybe as my background, I've got a background in neuroscience, and that means I always had this systems approach of looking at things, and that is really sort of trending through my career. I started with Capgemini, like you mentioned, in data analytics, and going more towards the technology that people use for marketing, for customer experience, for their customers. And from that, I hopped to a couple of different consultancies, went more into adoption. How do you get technology actually adopted in an organization? Towards, organizations usually have a kind of strategy, and they buy technology sometimes as part of the strategy, and sometimes they just buy technology because it looks cool. And then always you run into, oh yeah, but how do we actually adopt it? Do we have the right data for it? Do we have the right people skilled up for it? So that whole topic was what I was working for bigger enterprises and for smaller organizations. And after doing that for about 14 years, I decided, okay, screw that, screw the corporate life. I'll start for myself, because I want to have more of a focus on revenue operations, but with the systems approach that I have. And well, AI has always been a big part of my career. I started programming social robots actually when I was just finishing my my uni with neuroscience.
Oh wow,
and
that's so much cooler than what I did at university. Wow, social robots. Are these okay? So you have to tell me about this a little bit more. What's one of those?
Yeah, so I did social robots and I did virtual reality. I did bodily illusions in virtual reality, but social robots, basically you had a tiny robot which was called a Nao. It's actually like 50 centimeters tall, and that robot was basically this research tool. You could do all kinds of stuff in there. You could program it, and now if you hook Claude up to it, that would be absolutely brilliant. But you could move it around. You could have it talk. You could program everything beforehand, and we had a little agent programming language back then. I don't remember what it was called. But basically what you want to do was have that robot interact with, like that was the children, to help them with diabetes, calculations, and sort of adherence to sort of getting those shots in for better diabetes management.
Wow, so anything that interacts with anyone, essentially, any human, but it's just a sort of almost like a partner, buddy.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And I did the same thing with Capgemini. Of course, back then we had big data was a whole big thing, and also AI came around. So together with IBM, I did AI use case with companies. That was more the statistical side of it. And now, of course, you have the Claude. What is it? It's like everything, more context, unstructured, so much more.
Yeah, the tools are seriously inviting, aren't they? When you see, we've got Anthropic releasing tools updates every 8 hours. So it's incredibly hard to focus on. And that's one of the reasons I was so keen to have a chat with you, because I know from my conversations in peer groups and events and things, talking to MSPs, we're still looking around trying to understand, the direction to go in. We're starting to see customers ask for this stuff now, which again is one of those areas where, there's a bit of pressure building up. And so it's nice to sort of explore a little bit more. Your view was interesting when we had our initial conversation, because you were talking more about the sort of not having that kind of maturity to implement AI is just going to basically be a waste of your time. So I'd like to just explore a little bit what you mean by that in terms of what we should be thinking about first, if that's okay. What MSPs should be thinking about first, who perhaps haven't had that much exposure. What should they be talking to their customers about and getting right? So
always with AI, it is all about the data that you put into it, right? Crap in, crap out. And with you had that with the statistical research before, and like 10 years ago, you had the same issue. So you always had to have good data put in. Now with LLMs, there is so much more context that people can sort of just jam into it. And again, here, if your data warehouse or if your CRM is sort of like a garbage fire, the LLMs will just make it a little bit more confident and a little bit faster. So it won't add any value. And here's the thing, to get the right data in, especially around if you want to use AI for automation or speeding things up, you need to have the right data in around your processes, because you want to improve and speed up your processes. And processes themselves, they generate data. So if I look at a sales process, for instance, and I work a lot with software companies, so they have pretty fast sales cycles, very high structured, big volume.
Is this where you focus, is it, Rutger? So that tends to be more...
That is where my focus...
The sales process initially, though, is that normally where you come in first? Okay, good to know, yeah.
And that's basically because that's where the biggest pain is usually felt and the biggest priority is for the business side. There's so much more to gain at the customer success side, but hey, you go where the pain is, where the appetite is, and that's usually more on the sales side, marketing sales side. So, like I mentioned, data is at the source of it. So with LLMs, it's the same thing. You need the right context. Where do you get context from? You get context from sales conversations. You get context from how customers progress through your sales funnel, how you have your first chats, how you are exchanging a PowerPoint presentation, emailing, and if you have that process structured, it is a lot easier for any AI, whether it's an LLM or whether it's a basic statistical model, to figure out, hey, how is your process actually working, and what variables would improve your conversion rate to getting a sale in.
I have a feeling,
and that's the direction that's taking.
Sorry. I have a feeling people listening to this will be thinking, okay, that sounds good, makes total sense. The customers I work with have no process at the moment. So where on earth can you give us a bit of a sort of, for someone who's green to this, how you would come in and start sort of mapping out a process, as it were? Let's use that example of the sales one.
Yeah. So here's the thing that helped me really sort of just coalesce everything in my head around everything that I've seen and done for the last couple of years, and that was lean management. Lean management is something that they use in the Toyota factories. They invented it there, and it was basically try and standardize everything and then continuously try and improve that from the get-go. And as you mentioned, so what is the first thing that you need to figure out with an organization? Okay, what's your process? Do you even have a process? Because if not, that might be the first issue.
Do you see that a lot? The companies you work with, obviously you're maybe slightly different size, but do you see that as well, that people just... Okay, good.
So if you look into startups that have a few million euros, you usually have a single founder that does all the sales, right? And at a certain point, they want to scale, they need to hire more salespeople because the single founder just can't handle the volume. At that point, the founder needs to transfer his sales process, to those new reps. And those reps need to try and figure out, okay, what is the actual standard? Does he have any documentation? Usually the answer is no. So it starts with documenting, talking with your client or talking with your own salespeople and saying, okay, what is your process actually of going through the work? And once you've done that, like really detailed, you actually even want to just sit beside them and really see what it is. Because people say one thing, they think another, and in practice they do something completely different.
How do you capture that? Are you going for sort of transcripts in a chat, and then in terms of capturing the sort of what they're doing, how does that work in reality?
Yeah. So realistically, it's just that. So usually just, okay, if you have any documentation, please share it with us so we have at least a general idea of what it is. And then you'd like to have a couple of, ride-alongs or walk-alongs and just sort of, I'll sit through a sales call. Show me how you do your sales call. I'll sit through a sales coaching session if we're talking about sales process. Whatever the process is for your customer, let me just sit through it and just see, what the actual process is. Usually it's quite different. And by asking them, why do you do certain steps? You understand the process behind it much further. And then if you want to automate that, okay, what can I actually automate, or where can I actually speed things up for the rep? Because there might be some inefficiencies or just things that have put in the process for whatever reason that they always do it like that. That's usually the answer. And we always done it like this. So is it the best way? I don't know, but we've always done like this. So why should I do anything else?
So you're looking to capture what they're doing first, and then you analyze, presumably with AI tools, and how can we optimize this?
Yes. So you can do something that's called a value stream mapping. You would look at how work progresses through the organization, which is sort of where you generate your value for your customers. And by analyzing, okay, where are, for instance, handovers? Handover moments are usually the ones that are the biggest inefficiencies. Anytime that you have a sales to marketing handover or marketing to customer success, sales to customer success, you sold the client, now we need to do the implementation. There's usually a lot of information lost there. And that information lost leads to, something was promised but wasn't delivered. That's something I think any MSP will recognize. We usually have a lot of those in any consultancy issue. Something was sold, we actually couldn't implement it. So how do we catch that?
What is it that's missing there in that stage? I'm just trying to just as like an example. I'm just trying to picture exactly what that information is. I mean, it makes total sense, but like what kind of detail do you think is that gets lost at that point? What are you looking for?
Just really good structured handovers. Mm-hmm. So that means that if you had a sales process, this is my world that I talked with, but any type of handover, you would try to figure out, okay, what is it what you have done? What is it that the customer expects from you? And is that something that you could actually deliver or no? And if the customer success person or whoever is on the next stage says, that's fun and games, but actually I cannot deliver this, so why have you solved that? Then you know that there's some miscommunication and you need to figure out, okay, maybe we need to, educate sales. What can we actually sell? What can we actually deliver? Or you'd need to have customer success in the room a little bit further to just look over, okay, you're going to sell this, this, and this. Well, number 2 will actually cost me a month instead of 2 weeks, what you expect. So just to get that expectation management better.
This is huge.
And that is the type of structure, this type of process that you want to go through. That is what revenue operation does, but also how you could look at any process, basically. How can I improve my process? Make the work flow faster, lesser rework, what you usually get, and a higher quality of output. So happy customers.
Yeah, this is really a big area. I know that lots of MSPs struggle with is project work. So as well as doing sort of recurring services, there's an element of project work, and so there's a scoping part, and obviously the salesperson needs to try and sort of capture requirements without sort of putting the person off at the time, and so they're pulling through these sort of project scopes, but then someone's got to deliver on that, obviously. So there's a real opportunity there, I suppose. Is your advice that you have, when you're doing the scoping and you're understanding what the process looks like, is your advice that you just try and get more stakeholders in the room at that point, or just by doing the process, it exposes what's needed for like a feedback loop, as it were?
Yeah. So the process, like you mentioned, it usually exposes, okay, what is needed, and then the process of improving that what is needed, that continuous loop. You just want to have that continuous feedback loop in the room without people pointing fingers and saying, oh yeah, sales has done this. Yeah, but you can't deliver. It's usually the issue. I think Deming said 94% of these types of issues are system issues. There was never an appointment made between how the work should progress. It was sort of just formulated. So by having that honest conversation and saying, okay, well, this is what we got. Well, this is what we can deliver. Okay. And maybe we need to figure out where that goes wrong. We try and figure out what the root causes are that things are going wrong. And by understanding that, you understand, okay, what should we fix? Instead of fixing the symptom, you fix the root cause, and then you can actually, progress better and faster and have something put in that actually improves the work that you deliver, or improves the value or the quality of the work that you deliver.
Where does theory of constraints fit into this? I know you're a big fan. Is it at this stage that you're looking for those elements?
Usually when you go through a process, there are specific constraints. And as the theory of constraints is also part of the Toyota. Whenever there is a process of work, you try and figure out, okay, what is the biggest bottleneck here? And if we could alleviate that bottleneck, then things would go faster. In software sales, they often think, well, our bottleneck is the amount of leads that we have, or the amount of sales reps that we have. But that's usually not the case. The case is usually that the conversion rate is too low, or the sales reps aren't picking up all of the well-qualified leads, or that marketing is delivering leads which aren't high qualified. So the constraint is somewhere else than people think it is. And you'll have that in any type of work. So you really need to figure out what is the actual constraint. And then if you can alleviate that, you'll find another constraint somewhere during the flow, and that's the way that the work, continues to progress. Again, continuous improving loop, because you're trying to figure out, okay, what are the next constraints? Alleviate that, alleviate that, alleviate that. And all of a sudden, after you've done that for, 6 months or a year, you'll find that you'll get a throughput of work or of customers that is maybe even twice as fast as you had beforehand. And that is without adding headcount, without adding any automation, any AI.
Excellent. Well, that ties nicely then into my next point, which is going to be around this. So obviously in our space, we're seeing like every single vendor get the AI stamp on there as soon as you can. Everyone wants just a slice of it without really necessarily knowing what it's going to do for them or what exactly they're asking for. Are you tired of wasting time on basic proposal tools? Sales Builder goes beyond PDFs, automating your entire sales process to win more deals and boost profits. Do you want to have a look at how it works? First off, we provide you with the foundation of a nice, simple, centralized view of your company's contacts and all of the useful related data points, and that's automatically synchronized with your PSA. The most efficient MSPs are ruthless about only selling a standardized portfolio. Connect to your distributors for your hardware details and availability too, your PSA to pull in your managed services, and then clear out all of that noise and distraction of ad hoc products and services you've been selling over the years. Define a tight portfolio with service bundles, set your margins, specify standard up and cross-sell items, and make sure that everyone is doing the same thing right across the business. Once you're clear on exactly what you want to be selling, it's time to work out who you can sell it to. Our white space analysis module helps your sales teams get laser focused. Spot the upcoming contract renewals, anything you're underbilling, visualize the service gaps, and focus on the most profitable account growth opportunities. So you know what you're selling, you know who you're selling to, it's time to send a proposal. Get beautiful, error-free, standardized and interactive quotes sent out without all that copying and pasting from supplier portals, adjusting templates, editing product information, all that stuff that just hemorrhages time and profits. With drag and drop content blocks and templates, you can make sure your document really resonates with your customers' needs or even their vertical, but in a way that's fast to produce because it's standardized. Plus, of course, customers can edit quantities and options there on the fly, they can e-sign, and you can see all of this going on right from within Sales Builder. Should your high-paid salesperson be consumed with low value and repeat orders? With Sales Builder, proposals aren't the only way that you can do business. You can flick a switch to activate a personal, web-based Amazon-style shopfront for customers stocked with only those items and pricing that you want that particular customer to see, and that they can purchase any time of the day or night without picking up the phone to you. So you're sending out quotes, there's activity in your storefront, but what's going to close this month? The quality of information in your pipeline is essentially dependent on whether a salesperson has kept it up to date. But just imagine for a minute a pipeline that updates itself. Sales Builder integrates with your PSA, giving you real-time deal stages and accurate pricing based on the actual quotes themselves. So there's no more forecasting surprises. Tired of clunky sales tools slowing you down? Sales Builder can be your secret weapon. Streamline your sales process, automate tasks, and discover all of that hidden profit. Start your free trial today and see how much you could be missing. We have got a great team of real people with lots of experience here, so let's chat and see how Sales Builder can help you take your MSP to that next level. So we've got this understanding now then of a process. So that's what we need first. So then there is this element of, okay, now what can we do with it? How can AI assist here? So what's your advice then when it comes to this? Is there more? Do we have to do more before we start thinking about the efficiencies that AI can bring, or where does it feature in our sort of what we're working through now? We've got this process sorted.
I think anytime someone wants to start with AI, I always try and ask, okay, but do you have the right data? Do you have a good standardized process that AI can read into, or that AI can try and understand to figure out, okay, how can I sort of automate a section of it, or how can I speed up a section of it, or do some pre-work or some post-work that will alleviate sort of the work, the total amount of work that humans need to do. So that again comes from having the right data, that comes from the right process and being able to track that. So being able to track that, I mean, you need to have a CRM or maybe with an ERP to figure out how the work flows through your system. When I started my career, I think 2 years in, I did a process mining course. Incredibly boring, but it does allow you to really measure, okay, where is work getting stuck? You know, again, the theory of constraints, where is work getting stuck? And okay, then we can alleviate that. But yeah, a good understanding, documentation of your context. Now with LLMs, you need to have your context as well. So what is it that you do? What is it that your customers do? How do you alleviate their pains with the work that you deliver? And how do you do that? That will help an LLM understand what it is you do, and also try and figure out, okay, what parts and bits can we expand or improve? Because now, if you add in that context, like Claude Cowork as an example, but it's the same with ChatGPT pretty soon probably, it will sort of try and analyze, okay, well, now I have a good understanding, and this is probably, a couple of cases where you could improve. Just based on generic theory of constraint application, it'll easily go through it with the right analysis, as long as you prompt it the right way. Or instead of, those long structured prompts that everyone was talking around half a year ago, have the right skills that you have in Claude to really just put in the right frameworks to use.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the sort of tactical side then. So we've got our processes, and we're thinking around sort of having some context. I've heard an enormous amount talked around how important it is. I mean, context engineering is the new prompt engineering, isn't it? I think if it's probably even that information's out of date as of the time of publish, but it's a really important thing to know how to do, isn't it, to gather that context. So what you're saying then is we understand the process first, then build our context, and then marry the two using AI tools to see where So I'll tell you what would help. What can you give me a few examples of the most important things to have in that context? Is it sort of business direction? Is it sort of structure of the company? What are the things that really you need in there to do anything useful with your sort of when you overlay it on your process?
Yeah. So if I take myself as an example, because that might be easiest for me, I have a workflow with how I work with customers. I have a workflow with, how I would acquire customers or how I would generate LinkedIn content. I'm one of those idiots that post 7 days a week now. But that is because I've become facilitated with Claude. Before that, I did everything manually, and I tried, and this is the trick, do things manually and talk aloud why you do certain things. What is your consideration for doing this and not that? Or what is that consideration? That is a great context to have and to record.
And are you putting that all into a central file? Is that like, so like, for example, like just taking Claude, for example, it's got the Claude.md, I think it is. So are you always updating? So I'm just trying to think in the context of MSPs working with clients, should they be thinking they're trying to help clients build out like a central repository then of this context when you're talking aloud and stuff? Where's that all going?
So I created this digital brain twin, I call it, using Obsidian, because this was where I was worrying as well. I think half a year ago, I was working together with ChatGPT back then, because back then ChatGPT was a little bit more advanced than Claude. And I was basically just telling it, okay, this is how I do my work. This is how I look at certain frameworks. These are the frameworks I like lean management. I put in Winning by Design's revenue architecture, all kinds of theory around change management, around how I do strategy. And then basically just try to create documents of it, like markdown documents, which are semi-structured. And at a certain point, I had so many documents, I was like, I need to link this up somehow. I need to create a knowledge graph of it. And that is how I ended up with Obsidian, because Obsidian is just that knowledge graph. So anything that I record, and I've been talking to ChatGPT and Claude more than my wife over the last year.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
Which she's okay with. She knows that, this is important. I can organize and structure everything I talk about. Client conversations get structured. People in my network get structured. Content I consume gets structured.
How does that get into Obsidian?
I create gets structured.
How does that get into Obsidian then? So are you just talking to it and telling it to just add that to a central file, or how does it do the organization of it all?
Basically like that. So I started a project with Cowork, and I said, I want to use Obsidian now as my structure. Let's go through this and figure out how we would structure it. So it was sort of like a back and forth and figuring out, okay, what do I think is a good categorization, for instance? Again, it's going to be a brain for me. So as a neuroscientist, I try to figure out, okay, how would my brain look like? And it's just a back and forth constantly. And I think this is what the future will be for any organization. You'll have this one nerdy RevOps AI guy who sits on top of your company's context and basically just helps with the ingestion of data, which is a very big part in agents. Ingest the right data and then do testing, constant testing to figure out, okay, what's the output? That's a bit crappy. Maybe I didn't do sources right or do references right. Because even with something like skill building, which is like I mentioned, structured prompts, if you allow Cowork or Claude or ChatGPT just to do that on its own, it will come up with generic stuff, like generic crap, that anyone else could sort of copy paste. So you really need to consider, okay, these are the frameworks that I use. These are the processes that I use. So that is, core part of it. And then there might be some research that I want to put in there as well, right? What are, good benchmarks, for instance? I have Claude research benchmarks, get some good sources in, use that to really get that structured prompt in with benchmarking. So I know, and whenever I go into a client, I know, okay, what are your numbers? And I can check the benchmark. Well, you're actually reasonably okay. Or, well, this is the weakest bit. We should probably look over there first.
This is fascinating to me. I just feel like if you're... let me get your take on this. So if I'm an MSP and I'm currently used to providing sort of network services, cybersecurity, all those sort of things, and clients are talking to me now, Is this realistic for them to be able to sort of switch to a degree? Because we've over the recent years, there's been a bit of a shift to, okay, let's really try and understand, the client's goal, the business goals, and then support them with technology. This is almost taking it a step further, and I can see the potential for this to be, like a moat, as they call it. That could be a real differentiator, that you understand your client's business on a completely different level. What are your thoughts on this? Do you feel like it's realistic for obviously it depends on the size, but realistic for these companies to be going in and doing this? Is it something you can learn and you can develop a process around? Because ultimately, monetization is the important thing. Like, how do you turn this into a service?
Well, I mean, realistically, what you see is that young people, like, they really jump on this, right? The people that have just started working, they work with Claude constantly. The question is, in the MSP world, will a young organization, like a young group that is doing this incredibly well, will this catch up with you? Will they out-leverage you in helping your clients understand AI or not? So it is part, around survival, I'd say. I know that a lot of white label stuff, or white collar is the right word, right?
Yes. Yeah.
White collar work is easier to do with AI, is going to be easier to do with AI. So people will still always prefer to work with people, at least until we have an AI overlord sort of running the organization. But really have to be able to show and understand what is going on. Because if you do not, there's a 20-something-year-old guy who does, and he will race right past you. He'll do it with, less people. He will do it with a whole chain of automated agents that run for him. So then the connections that you've had, the references that you've had, they will not matter, because that guy will be twice as cheap and twice as fast as you, at least. So understanding this, every AI guy says you need to do this or you'll get taken over by the guy who does use AI.
Yeah, of course.
It's not there at this point. But I do expect that in the next 2 years, you will have that situation. Because if I look at how quickly, for instance, my work as a consultant was a lot of PowerPoint building, right? I hated it. I was really crappy at it as well.
Amen, brother. work with the devil.
But I had to learn, right? I had to learn the right frameworks. I had to learn pyramid principles, so I understood it, and I was able to do it. But now, just because I have those frameworks and I have that principles in my head and I have my own branding, I can sort of just go with co-work, and within half an hour, it's a presentation. It's all done. It maybe needs a little bit of adjusting, but I have a full presentation in half an hour instead of the hours that it usually takes. And it's the same thing with creating an offer document or whatever work order you use for your customers. It'll be faster if you understand the frameworks. You usually have a standard contract. You have a standard set of work. So even the project management, you can automate that because it is repeatable. It is pretty reasonably structured, as long as you have that process clear and you have the process reasonably standardized.
That's going to be the hurdle, isn't it? Because there's two things here. There's like the really exciting, sexy AI work where you can see immediate improvements, but actually maybe, I don't know, if you're perhaps young and fresh to this industry and you want to see those big gains fast, maybe the boring process standardization stuff is actually the most valuable. Are they going to do it? I don't know. Do you need two people there? Do you think if you're running an MSP, do you think the best thing to do would be to recruit someone who did this process standardization, and then someone else who's just like totally on top of the hourly releases that are coming out on the tech front?
I think that what I see is that usually, even in SaaS companies, they'll eventually have one AI nerdy guy, and there'll be a run on these AI nerdy guys. Absolutely.
Yeah, I see that.
Who loves to do this, who loves to talk with the chatbots, who loves to do that testing back and forth, who loves to play around with data and understands data, and who will tell you, I need the right process first, because otherwise I get crappy output. Give me the right process. Here's the structure that you want to use. Record yourself on the video. Do it at least 3 times. I want 2-3 hour videos. Give those back to me. I'll analyze it and I'll structure your process for it. Boom, ready, go. It'll probably be a fractional type of work, because especially for smaller organizations. I don't expect there will be enough of these people to have like full-time jobs, or maybe enough work for full-time jobs. So definitely I expect there to be a run on this type of role fractionally.
Interesting. But
a new agency.
Yeah, it could well be. I mean, I guess the thing is for MSPs, if they're offering us as a service, then they're taking on clients consistently. Maybe there would be a full-time role. I don't know. Rutger, we could just carry on, and I could just go deeper and deeper. And I could definitely speak to you all day, to be honest, about this stuff. I think we'll probably have to get you on again at some point. But it's been wonderful to have you on. I think that's been a nice little baseline, nice little introduction to how you approach things and the importance of getting things right and the foundations. It's certainly going to be etched in my mind now before I run off and go and develop the next app or whatever it is I fancy doing. We always have a section in this show which is called Industry Manure. So this is a bit of advice, and given that you're not actually totally immersed in the MSP space, you're welcome to take this from wherever you like, but a bit of advice that you hear in your space, hopefully related, that's just absolute rubbish, that you just really grinds your gears when you hear it.
Well, that's a bit of just buying this AI tool and buying all kinds of AI tools, which is probably a load of crap. Because like I mentioned, if you don't have the right data to ingest it, forget about it. So that is, I think, the biggest pile of crap there is. And the other thing is, and this is coming from consultant, any consultant loves their own consulting frameworks. I'm that kind of guy as well, but it's always around that customer experience, always around that customer interaction and the customer's context. And, Claude can help with that as well. I use it to prep calls and really get into the context of the customer before going into a call. This just helps me so much more to sort of stay on base and sort of stay out of that, consulting, trying to sell, seeing a nail for every screw that's there because I've got a hammer and I want to use it.
Definitely. I mean, the thing is, we're taught, aren't we, to try and, make systems and things that scale, that are repeatable and so on. But then if you do that, of course, immediately it doesn't fit everyone. So you're kind of, it's a bit of a conflict there. Rutger, let us know, what are you up to at the moment? This is your yell from the barn. So let us know where we can find out more about you and potentially how you can help MSPs or anyone listening to this that could do with a bit of a steer on this stuff.
Sure. You can find me on LinkedIn. Like I mentioned, I post daily now. It's RUTGERKATZ. There's only one of us right now. Me and the brain, of course, but there's one of me. So I'm used to finding. Look for the black and the neon green coloring, and you're sure to find me. I've also got a website, www.neontriforce.com. I'm putting up a blog there now as well, which obviously has been generative AI optimized and SEO optimized through a skill I built in Cowork. I'd love to chat with people about this. Love to figure out how to help them, because this is something that I'm also trying to. I am productizing as we speak, as a way to help customers. Trying to figure out, okay, where am I right now? Do I have the right data, processes, and et cetera in place? And then what is the next step for me to actually get started on, which is actually valuable instead of just something like a fancy new tool?
And Rutger is extremely approachable and non-salesy. So if you just want to bounce some ideas around, I highly recommend you reach out to him. Been an absolute pleasure, Rutger. Thank you so much for joining us on Harvest. And I look forward to keeping an eye on your content you're putting out and hopefully seeing you on the show again sometime.
Thanks, James. Thanks for having me.
All right. All the best. Take care. That is it for this episode of Harvest. If you found this useful, all the links we mentioned are in the show notes. And of course, if you enjoyed it, please do leave us a review and share it with a friend, or even better, someone else in the industry who you know would get value from it. Until next time, happy harvesting.